It was May 1940, and Adolf Hitler gazed from his mountain fortress with a mad vision of conquest. Today, Europe, tomorrow, the world. German forces had smashed through France's hopelessly out-of-date defenses, and in a matter of days had reduced a great country and a proud culture to the shame of surrender. The old order had been swept away by the old enemy. Hardly a French fist would be raised in defiance, although at least one of the locals signaled his contempt for the invader. British forces who'd rushed to France's aid found themselves trapped in a huge German pincer movement and escaped by the back door known as Dunkirk, abandoning their arms as they fled home by sea. So now Hitler and his Nazi high command ruled unopposed, with a fascist stooge as prime minister, the elderly Marshal Pétain. In Britain, meanwhile, an elderly aristocrat with a reputation for being brilliant but erratic had emerged as the nation's new leader. Winston Churchill was a man with a large intellect and an even larger heart, who believed he was walking hand in hand with destiny, as indeed he was. His first words to the nation were a stirring call to arms.
Arm yourselves, and be ye men of valor, and be in readiness for the conflict, for it is better for us to perish in battle than to look upon the outrage of our nation and our altars, as the will of God is in heaven, even so let it be.
In June, the southeast coast was ablaze as the British tried out a fire trap, a less than inspired invention designed to repel invaders. For rumors of an imminent invasion were spreading through London like a disease. The War Cabinet had all-night sittings as the whole country steeled itself for the German assault, which everyone knew would come from the skies. The Nazis had only to destroy Britain's undermanned, understrength air force, and the island kingdom was theirs. Over the next 4 months, Britain's destiny would be decided by small but deadly fighter planes and the men who flew them. Hitler had put his closest friend, Hermann Goering, in charge of the awesomely powerful German Air Force, and together they were now cooking up their master plan for the invasion of Britain. But Hitler had chosen badly. Goering had been a fine combat flyer in the First World War, but he would prove to be a short-sighted strategist. In London, Churchill prepared his cabinet for the worst.
And if driven to desperate hazard, he attempts the invasion of the British Isles, as well he may. We shall not flinch from the supreme trial. Lift up your heart. All will come right. Out of the depths of sorrow and of sacrifice will be born again the glory of mankind.
Brave words could not conceal the frightening truth that Britain was desperately unprepared. All able-bodied men were needed, and foreigners with a powerful grievance against Hitler were especially welcome.
To the friendly fields of Scotland comes General Sikorski, Prime Minister and Commander-in-Chief of the Polish forces in Britain. Attaching the ribbon of the Virtuti Militari to the standard, he adds the highest honor of the Polish army to the colors of the Mountain Brigade in recognition of their gallantry at Narvik. Officers and men stationed at this training camp are decorated for bravery in the field. A Polish woman doctor and a nurse receive the military medal. Of the original strength of the brigade, only 35% remain. The places of those who fell in the campaign in Poland have been taken by miners and peasants from the plains. Thousands of Poland soldiers are ready to fight on. Theirs is the spirit that can never be conquered.
Swelling the ranks of professional soldiers were amateurs with specialist skills, as motorcyclists were described. So when the War Office called for motorbike warriors, hundreds of volunteers leapt into the saddle.
To a man. In an emergency, the telephone and telegraph services may fail, and these chaps will carry vital messages for the authorities. They sign on eagerly, anxious to do their bit for the greatest cause of all. Each adopts for his or her slogan, "It all depends on me."
Cities and towns were suddenly emptied of children, as 1.5 million were evacuated. With German bombers only 30 minutes from London, many families sent their children into the safer countryside to live with strangers. Thousands of these children, despite their smiles for the camera, would soon be begging to come home.
When war was declared, we were all issued with gas masks and told to put them on when the sirens went. I put mine on and put my Sylvia in the black box she was issued with and started pumping. I kept pumping away, but was so worried I wasn't doing it right. She just kept screaming.
What is thought to be the perfect baby's gas mask has arrived, and it's being demonstrated by the Home Office in London. It looks something like a diver's helmet. And now the perfect baby's gas mask is being fitted with the perfect baby. In goes a few weeks old youngster, and the lower part of the apparatus is strapped round his body. He takes it all lying down.
Adventurous and patriotic young men rushed to join the Royal Air Force, the youngest and most glamorous of the services. The training, though, especially for fighter pilots, was immensely rigorous. In 6 months of fiercely concentrated mechanical and physical tests, only the highest of standards was acceptable. For these men, after all, would be the cutting edge of Britain's first line of defence. They would provide a flying shield by day and night.
The air crews are taken in groups of...
About 6 of us had to attend this class because our night flying results hadn't been quite up to it. We were all a bit tense, I remember. I'd been existing on a diet of raw carrots for about a fortnight because I'd been told they had lots of vitamin D, I think it was, which improved your eyesight. I was prepared to try anything. We had to read these charts with dark glasses on, and the temptation to lean forward was very strong.
Sometimes a natural desire to make a good score leads an airman to lean forward. So he's harnessed to the back of the chair with a clip.
I must say, I felt a bit like my dad's Labrador.
They don't want any cribbing in the blackout. And besides, here come their copybooks, and they mustn't blot those. In actual practice, the test would be made in complete darkness.
The class was known as the Cat's Eye School, and it really was just like being in school again, with a dreadful exam at the end of term. Worse, really, we knew that if we failed, we'd be grounded.
The examination's over. We have come to know how the RAF judges the quality of the night eyes of those who patrol the skies when darkness falls. Science makes it possible for man to detect the dim outline of his enemy flying through the night. Those specialists of the dark realms amid the stars seek out their prey. We unhesitatingly praise the men who fly by night. No doubt at all, the eyes have it.
Military exercises were being conducted all over the British Isles, like this rehearsal for Invasion Day by the Royal Engineers. This was a deadly serious business, despite the jaunty tone of the newsreel.
When the war is over, it looks as if these lads will all be able to get jobs as tightrope walkers. Another branch of the RE's work is laying landmines. And talking about camouflage, the latest spring styles in battle hats. And before they move on, they never forget to replace the divots. There's nothing the REs like better than a big bang.
The last line of defence would be the Home Guard, a volunteer force of 1.5 million men. Short of firepower, but bursting with patriotic pride, they were an eccentric mixture of beardless youths and old war dogs.
Their orders, and this is something on which there has not always been clear understanding, are first of all to observe. Now, here's an example. set in a typical piece of country, downland and sea. Home guards patrolling in pairs, as always, keep watch for any sign of invasion by land or water. They have seen something. One man runs back to platoon headquarters to report, while the other continues to observe the country.
Then one summer afternoon, the balloon went up. There'd been snap raids before on coastal defenses, but this was the real thing. Radar signals indicated that a massive airborne attack was about to be launched on an airfield in Kent. British fighter squadrons in the southeast swarmed to the defense. Within minutes, they were engaging the enemy. Many of these young British fighter pilots were flying into deadly combat for the first time.
I was in a state of shock, as though someone had put a live wire in the cockpit and sent waves of electric current charging through me. I tried to remember everything I'd been taught. Get above them, come out of the sun, watch your rear at all times. It was like a madhouse up there. I could hear the skipper yelling in my earphones, but before I could react, a burst of gunfire would shake the old crate from top to bottom, and I'd throw into a steep turn with my heart thumping like a hammer. I let off a few bursts, but I don't think I hit a single stupid.
Those first fierce encounters would set a pattern of one-to-one, man-to-man combat, and it was the caliber of the men, more than the planes, that would determine the outcome of the Battle of Britain. They were a rich mixture, those RAF fighter pilots, several breeds of Englishmen, a sprinkling of Canadians, Australians and New Zealanders, with a peppering of mad-as-hell Polish airmen bent on revenge. It needed a touch of madness to fight this kind of war. One minute your feet were up, the next you were scrambling into a plane that would loft you into the sky for a chance meeting with a stranger who passionately desired just one thing, your sudden death. The leather visor you fastened on was absolutely crucial. It contained radio contact with your squadron, along with that vital oxygen supply. You climb steeply for 12,000 feet, high enough so that you can swoop down out of the sun and unsight the enemy, scanning the skies while your heart thumps like a trip hammer. Suddenly it's bandits at 12 o'clock, and all hell breaks loose. Back at base, the ground crew relaxed between raids. These were the battle's less glamorous heroes, the men who worked around the clock to keep those planes in the air.
As soon as we heard the siren, we'd run like mad for the planes. There was actually quite a competition between the crews to see who could get their Hurricanes off the ground first. We were generally one of the quickest, and we took pride in that. I always had mixed feelings as I saw them take off. I knew I was doing my bit to keep Jerry out, but it was an uncomfortable feeling to know that some of our chaps would not be coming back. When it was one of the planes you'd serviced yourself, you took it rather personally. Sometimes, if there was a show just above the airfield, you'd see a plane burst into flames, and the flash would be so bright you couldn't pick up the markings, and you'd wonder, was it one of ours? Nobody would ever say it was, even if he thought so. It was bad luck to do that. When our chaps came back, you'd find yourself counting them in. And if any were missing, you'd say, "Oh, he's probably made a forced landing somewhere." And you didn't believe that either.
Until the Spitfire arrived midway through the Battle of Britain, the Hurricane fighter was virtually the lone spearhead of British air defence. It lacked the speed and agility of the Spitfire and the German Messerschmitt, but the Hurricane's rugged strength and remarkable durability under fire made it a favourite among pilots. The faster, better-armed Spitfire was marvellously stable. German fighter pilots became so alarmed by its reputation that some developed a psychological disorder known as Spitfire phobia. They'd claimed they'd been shot down by a Spitfire when there were only Hurricanes in the sky. Britain urgently needed more pilots to fly both fighters, and Canadian airmen answered the call.
The first job on stepping ashore is to send a cable back home. Just arrived in the old country, and it won't be long now before the Boche hears from us. So don't worry, Mum, the old country is going to be all right.
The arrival of recruits from the New World would give British airmen the chance to throw off combat fatigue, and for a few precious days and nights, escape to another world.
Roy has a special request to make. He asks the band leader to play their favorite tune, the melody that means so much to Pat and him.
London's famous Café de Paris night spot had been turned into a servicemen-only club, a place, so it was rumoured, where no man in an RAF uniform ever failed to score. But the world was darkening outside. The Luftwaffe was throwing the awesome force of its bomber command at Britain, and London in particular. Winston Churchill growled his defiance.
These cruel, wanton, indiscriminate bombings of London are, of course, a part of Hitler's invasion plan. He hopes, by killing large numbers of civilians and women and children, that he will terrorize and cow the people of this mighty imperial city and make them a burden and anxiety to the government, and thus distract our attention unduly from the ferocious onslaught he is preparing. Little does he know the spirit of the British nation, or the tough fibre of the Londoners.
With your permission, we will fire our biggest gun and do the item which we call the Londoner and the Hun. For the purpose of this item, which we think now should be done, I play the part of the Londoner.
And I, most reluctantly, the Hun. You'll have noticed, said the Hun, what they've been and gone and done to the highways and the byways of your town. But it's nothing, said the Hun, to the fusillade of fun that the Führer has a mind to send you down. Aren't you staggered? Aren't you cowed? Aren't you praying out aloud? Aren't you dreading every setting of the sun? Aren't you weary of blaspheming at the bombs that come a-screaming? Don't you wish that you was dreaming? Said the Hun.
Shut your big blue pencil mouth, said the Londoner. There's a channel to the south, said the Londoner. But the bully who's your boss doesn't dare attempt to cross. So the nasty-minded cuss thinks he'll take it out of us. But he'd better think again, said the Londoner. We can stand a lot of pain, said the Londoner. We're not dumb Teutonic mutts. We've the guns and we've the guts. You can tell Adolf he's nuts, said the Londoner.
One of those indomitable Londoners was a young woman called Rosie Newman, who set out each day, armed with an 8mm movie camera, to record her impressions of the war. These were the scenes of devastation that met her eye after one terrible night of bombs in London. Rosie Newman recorded one of the side effects of the war, the daily queue for food, with upper, middle and working classes mixing socially for the first time. Although even the Blitz couldn't destroy the strongest class division of all, the price barrier. That irritating bomb damage was soon hauled aside to clear the way for an unimpeded vision of exclusive loveliness. But as darkness fell, Londoners huddled underground in the safety of the tube. The bombers had returned.
German bombers rained fire and high explosive bombs in their most savage attack on London. Here again is the blood...
I have never forgotten that blazing sky. It was uncanny. It was also red and vicious. You could see flames and smoke rising clearly into the darkness of the night. We had high explosives being dropped. The vibrations increased, and then it seemed as if all hell had broken loose. We made a hasty retreat back to our shelter for the onslaught of the night.
Rocked by blasts like some foul giant's breath, and blistered by the intense heat, London's firemen carry on. Here are heroes in action.
I grabbed a saucepan from the kitchen and put it on my head for protection from falling glass, and hurried outside to see what was going on. An infernal din and brilliant array of colours lit the sky all around me.
Thick smoke hangs over the heart of Britain as a choking dawn reveals the terrors of the night. London has been wounded during the hours of darkness, but what colossal strength runs in her veins?
By now, many London families had built air raid shelters of their own. They piled into them as soon as the bombing started.
The night lights flickered and made patterns of the shelter walls. Bombs were raining down fast and furious now. One could hear guns. They were firing at top speed not far away. The noise was terrific. The shelter vibrated several times, and I had visions of being buried alive.
At daybreak, when the bombers had gone, families would emerge from their Anderson shelters, blinking in the light like moles. German air raid tactics were changing. Now they were attacking day and night on a wider and longer front, from Plymouth to Glasgow, from Liverpool to Sheffield. But London was still the prime target. They were determined to break the city's spirit.
You're forgetting, said the Hun, that your streets are overrun with the homeless and the hungry and the halt. Not to mention, said the Hun, that your buildings by the ton are succumbing to our aerial assault. And the palace of your king has a badly crippled wing. Crazy Cockney, the blitzkrieg's but begun. It's your diet for duration. Why the stubborn hesitation? What about capitulation? Said the Hun.
Why, you nasty knock, said the Londoner. How you miss the ruddy mark, said the Londoner. All the deeds of which you're proud are but stitches in your shroud. Every little child you slay is a crime for which you'll pay. Vent your sanguinary spleen, said the Londoner. God will save our king and queen, said the Londoner. And you vile Pygmalion simp, with his aid, we'll put a crimp in that paper hanging pimp, said the Londoner.
This was a public crusade to crank up national morale, which the government was convinced must be faltering. They organised sing-songs in parks and comic turns from pros like Jack Warner.
And a story I heard the other day, story of a sailor man hanging over the side of a destroyer in the Mediterranean, and he got suddenly thirsty, and he shouted out, "Waiter," and about 15 Italian submarines popped up.
Another spot of community singing helps to keep the spirits up. A number of speakers urge the crowds to keep cheerful, but believe you me, it's quite unnecessary, for a more cheerful crowd has seldom been gathered together in a public park, even in peacetime.
Once again, Bandwagon bravely presents Chestnut Corner.
The big names of radio, like Arthur Askey and Stinker Murdoch, were roped in as well.
Where do the motorhomes come from? China. What part of China? Hong Kong. Thanks, Dave and Joe. Now, where are we? Would you like to see a photograph of me taken when I was in hospital? Are there? Here you are. I'm in the end bed. If the end bed's empty. Is it? I must have get out for a minute. Who is that lady I saw you with last night? That wasn't a lady. That was my nephew. He walks that way.
August the 13th, 1940, the day the Germans called Eagle Day, the first blow in a 3-day operation designed to wipe out all RAF resistance and smooth the way for the launching of the German invasion of England. But the Luftwaffe had picked a bad day. 2 of their squadrons got lost in the fog. Nor had they counted on a switch in RAF tactics. This time, British fighters avoided one-to-one combat with German fighters and went for the heart of the enemy formation, the bombers themselves. On that first day, the British destroyed 71 German aircraft and lost just 31 themselves. On the following day, the score was Britain 100, Germany 53. Hermann Goering would be so shocked by the number of German officers lost in Operation Eagle that he issued an order. In future, only 1 officer in each bomber. But British casualties had been heavy too. As the number of wounded rose, public hospitals became overcrowded and country houses were used for the overflow. Amateur camerawoman Rosie Newman recorded a day in the life of one of these emergency hospitals and found it decorated by oak paneling and well-bred young ladies doing their bit as wartime nurses. While on the front lawn, convalescing servicemen revealed what an eternity had passed since they'd seen the sun. The fight for survival was becoming a woman's war as well. With so many British men needed for the armed services, British women, the ones unmarried and under 30, were volunteering for essential jobs in the services themselves and in the war industries.
And what would you like to do?
Well, I'd like to help to build Spitfires. My boy's in the RAF, well, and I feel I'm helping him.
And you, Miss Clark?
Well, I think the sooner we all pull together in this thing, the sooner it will be over. I myself would like to go in the services, because it's the uniform that appeals.
Now, Miss Stetch, would you like to go for munitions as well?
Yes, I would. I would like to make one big bomb so as to polish off that there man.
And what would you like to do?
I'd like to go on the ATS.
Why the ATS?
Well, plenty of variety, and I should be doing my bit to help my country. And one never knows, I might be the Sergeant Major.
At an experimental gunnery station, the intricate job of plotting shell bursts is done by selected ATS women. Through special draft frames and glass tables, they record the bursts as shells are tested on the ranges.
Stand by. Shot. Look in.
Bob! Now watch the explosion in the sand dunes. Most of the officers hold science degrees, while other ranks have to be up to matriculation standard.
Up. 3020. 21.
The brains trust of the ATS ably apply their talents in a war of science. This was bound to happen.
We stood by the equipment from sundown to sunrise. In the winter, it was bitterly cold, on the Searchlight and the Ack sites. We were certainly glad of our teddy bear coats and mittens. I remember one night, a German bomber pilot caught in the beam. He was so near I could see his helmet and goggles. He shot out of the light and pulled out of the dive to safety. I couldn't help thinking what a brave lad he was.
There were long waiting lists for the Woffs and Wrens, but they still needed women for the duller jobs. Recruiting films did their damnedest to make cooking and waitressing sound glamorous.
Why don't you join in? It's fun.
Don't know what we'd do without them.
We need 600 girls every week.
Come and help them.
We need you. See you soon.
Women who graduated from serving in the canteen to working in the munitions industry felt a glow of pride.
They said if you can work that machine, you can work anything. It was like 3 motorbikes joined together with all sorts of different levers. You were given 2 weeks to learn it. I thought I'd never get the hang of it. Funnily enough, I actually learned to work it in 2 days. We had to work very hard there, but on the whole, we were a happy bunch. We sang most of the time.
I'm the girl that makes the thing that holds the oil that oils the spring that drives the shank that burns the crank that works the thingamy-bob. It's a ticklish sort of job, making a thing for a thingamy-bob, especially when you don't know what it's for. But it's the girl that makes the thing that drills the hole that holds the ring that works the thingamy-bob that makes the engine roll. And it's the girl that makes the thing that holds the oil that oils the spring that works the thingamy-bob that's going to win the war.
More than 7 million women became involved in the war effort, and those who became qualified aircraft mechanics worked 70-hour weeks during the Battle of Britain, at half the pay of their menfolk. Yet it may have been a sign that an invasion was still feared, that women were being trained to use machine guns. If you'd wandered into the heart of London's West End one late summer afternoon in 1940, you might well have feared that the Hun had landed. But a second look would have reassured you.
The supposed airborne invaders are represented by those wearing tin hats. These are the umpires, while the Home Guardsmen with forage caps put up the defense. Amid the piles of Nazi-made debris, both sides gain valuable experience in street fighting, in readiness for when they may have to use grenades instead of water bombs, and Tommy guns in place of empty rifles. The almost sinister silence is broken as hand-to-hand fighting breaks out with a clash of bayonets. The changed face of London City witnesses her businessmen fighting with weapons as well as wits. umpires were satisfied that, after 2.5 hours of fighting, the good men had beaten the bad men with no hard feelings.
And still the authorities were warning everyone about the ever-present possibility of German spies and of the dangers of loose talk.
He said to her, "Let's go to Coomwood for a picnic on Saturday, Mary." She said to him,
We can't do that, silly. It's closed to the public. There's a dump of our new mine detectors there.
the consequence was...
They're right overhead now, Centre. Looks like the wood's going to get it.
And the world said,
That's your fault, Mary. It's more important than ever nowadays not to indulge in careless talk.
September 1940. If the Germans were going to invade, they would have to do it now, before the weather made an invasion by sea impossible. Britain braced itself for the biggest air assault of all. This was Goering's last throw. In 2 days, the Luftwaffe flew 2,800 sorties in a relentless attack on British airfields. 39 British fighters were lost in 1 day. In a week, 115 pilots were killed. The RAF was running out of fighters and the men to fly them. For the first time since battle had begun, British losses were as heavy as the enemy's. On the ground, German bombs had killed thousands of civilians. Newsreels stemmed the flow of bad news with some examples of ordinary heroism.
Home had been demolished.
Miss Higgins?
Yes, sir?
Where were you when the bomb?
Well, in bed. Where do you think I was?
And,
What happened?
and, what happened to you?
Oh, it blew me out.
Blew you out of bed?
It must have blew me out.
Oh, well,
But I don't remember no more.
You managed to get out of the house all right?
Yes.
Has it hurt you at all? Do you feel any effects of it?
No, only a bit shook. But I had to find my own way out, and I was trapped every time and wherever I went.
And how do you feel now? And you're still feeling that you...
Yes,
carry
bar a
on?
bit being shaken, I feel all right.
Yes.
Fine.
That's good.
Ladies, best kick it was 4 pounds a tenner.
Shouted Buster Kane. Then someone mentioned his George medal.
Now, lovely kick, Edward. Lovely kick, Edward.
He replied. John Kane hadn't heard that for helping to save 7 lives in a London blitz, he had won the George medal.
Well, Buster, I'm very proud of what you did. I congratulate you.
Thanks, Governor.
Now tell them all about it.
Righto, Governor. We went in a factory and we see 7 men lying in a pit. So me and a policeman helped to get them out. After we got them out, we brought them out on doors, and after that I went and had a ginger beer in a pub.
Once more, the Luftwaffe hurled itself at resilient British fighters and tireless British guns. Once more, they were staggered by the size and ferocity of the British response. Their intelligence reports had told them that the RAF was a decimated force, that this time German bombers would meet only token resistance. But again, it was the Luftwaffe which suffered damaging losses. As a German officer wrote in his diary, "We are being bled to death." This was the turning point, what Churchill would later call the hinge of fate. The Germans knew there was no possibility now of an invasion of England. Not this year. On September 17th, 1940, Adolf Hitler announced that the invasion had been postponed indefinitely. He had business elsewhere. The Battle of Britain was effectively over. In the battle for supremacy in the air, Britain had lost 746 fighters, with 520 pilots killed. A far better strike rate than the Germans, who lost 1,733 aircraft of all kinds, including 40% of their entire force of fighter planes. More than 2,600 German airmen were killed.
Come to the cookhouse door, my foot.
The war would go on, but without that sense of impending doom. Christmas would be celebrated with gusto.
Peace be blowed, the Navy's here and he wants the lot. Okay, they don't want your Christmas pudding. You can, take it easy, chums, he was fooling you. There's plenty for everyone and no ill feelings. Until tomorrow. Once upon a Christmas, a very good man would come down the chimneys laden with toys, but this year he walks among the ruins of many homes, the work of an evil being whom no one loves. Hello, there goes the alert. You see, the kiddies have organized their own spotting system. Into action go window watchers and chimney spotters, because Santa Claus has arrived. Soon the whole district is alive with excited boys and girls. For 12 whole months they've been waiting for this. Mind you, they began to wonder if he had had a bomb on his place. But here he is, the old darling, and his toys aren't rationed. They knew Mum and Dad were wrong when they said there mightn't be a Father Christmas this year. At last, something to play with. The night won't seem half so noisy now. Good old Santa Claus. Oh, Mum, now we can have a Christmas tree with lights on and everything. We mustn't forget the blackout, though. It'll be a nice Christmas if it doesn't raid.
As hoses still play on the smoldering ruins of Farnon.
But it did raid. The concentrated bombing may have stopped, but sudden one-off raids continued until halfway through 1941. It was as though Hitler, preoccupied with his war in the East, would suddenly remember stubborn British pride and lash out in malice.
They bring the injured to be ministered by these gallant...
In May 1941, London suffered its last brutal assault. That night, nearly 1,500 people were killed, more than in the San Francisco earthquake. In 8 months, 40,000 people had been killed by the bombs, half of them in London. And yet, even as bewildered citizens walked through the ruins of their town, an inspiring thought took wing. We can rebuild.
Mornings after the raids before sees bungers up of bomb-owls, their bomb-owl bunger-uppers, on the job, filling in those empty window frames which are so drafty these days. And while I think of it, as Bert knows how to repair splinter holes, he'd better take a look at Bill's pants. We don't in any way minimize the tragedy of our suffering towns and cities, but the citizens are a valiant people. And one day, as Mr. Churchill said, we will rebuild them more to our credit than some of them were before.
And so to the day when the enemy had been conquered, and Britons everywhere, in the midst of their joy, paused to remember the gallant men who'd led the fight against tyranny.
And so we, many, honor the few to whom final victory was but a dream.
May I repeat again the words I used at that momentous hour. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.